Well, we've been talking about rapture and timelines and things like that. Now, what we got to remember is that a lot of people are watching what's going on in the world and lining it up with the Bible. So, because as Christians, we are told by Jesus to watch, so that we will not be taken unawares, right? And a lot of people say, "Well, nobody knows the day or the hour." You know, I get tired of hearing that, because that's just somebody who parrots off the same words over and over and over. You know, Einstein said, you know, definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. You know, no one knows the day or the hour. Those 8 words over and over and over. Well, Jesus said, he said, "You will know the season." Well, I know the season. Many other Christians know the season too. We're very, very close to both the rapture and the second coming. Jesus talks about the rapture and the second coming both in Matthew 24. What is hidden will be revealed. You know, that sort of thing. See, so what I'm going to go back here, Matthew 24, verse 14. This is where the rapture is for the Christian church. The church being Christians, not the building. Okay, church is not a building. The Holy Spirit. Everybody who's a real Christian, their body is a temple of the Holy Spirit. Even if it's decrepit, old and decrepit, it's still a temple of the Holy Spirit. Okay. Verse 14. "And this gospel of the kingdom shall be preached in the whole world for a testimony to all nations. And then shall the consummation come." Right? What is the consummation? That means the end. The end shall come. And the end for who? Christians. Because we have Christians in the world, and then you have everybody else. Right? This is including Jews and unbelievers and people who follow a lot of other different false religions. Okay, you could say, I could already hear it. Well, how do you know it's a false religion? Because Jesus told me it's all false. He's the only way. So, verse 15 is where Jacob's trouble starts. Okay, these things with Jacob's trouble, which pertain to the Jews. Okay, that stuff starts in verse 15, and why is the rapture? Why is the rapture at verse 14? If it says, "And then shall the consummation come," it says that. Consummation means the end. Okay, it's finished. Okay, then shall that come. Why is that the rapture? Because verse 15 tells us, "When therefore you shall see the abomination of desolation, which was spoken of by Daniel the prophet, standing in the holy place, he that readeth, let him understand." So in verse 15 is the Antichrist unveiling himself, declaring that he is God in the third physical temple that the Jews had constructed in Israel. And in 2 Thessalonians 2 tells us that that cannot happen until he who is restraining, which is the Holy Spirit, which dwells within every Christian, is removed. Okay? This is why. That's why. Alright? Now, let's talk about Matthew 24 a little bit more. It talks about verse 15 onward to about verse 30, 31, somewhere in there. Okay, it talks about Jacob's trouble. This is the time where God is punishing the Jews for the last time for their disobedience and, not understanding that Jesus was the fulfillment. Okay, he was the Messiah. And they chose to ignore that. Okay, kind of like when old Moses went up, and came back down, and they had already had a golden calf. I mean, how ridiculous is that? It's just so ridiculous. I mean, okay, it's 40 days and 40 nights or whatever. 40 days, if I remember right. Moses was gone a bit. They wanted something to bow down to, so the old golden calf came back. I mean, come on, guys. Use your heads. These Jews sometimes, and then there are other people too. Just like, there was this Asian woman. She's a Christian now, but she had a situation in her family. She had been Buddhist, and she went up to a statue of Buddha and she says, "This situation is happening in my family, and if you are real, you tell me how to deal with it." Of course, just statue. Buddha was a guy and he's dead. Jesus is totally different. Jesus was a flesh and blood physical being inhabited by God himself. God in the flesh, came to earth to set us straight. Right? Just totally different. Totally different. Same with every other leader of every other religion in the world. They're all dead. There's only one who rose from the dead, went back home, and that was Jesus. Alright. Let's go on here. So we had the rapture, and then there's the second coming. So we got the rapture, then we've got Jacob's trouble, then we have the second coming, right? So verse 27, as lightning cometh out of the east, it appeareth even unto the west, so shall also the cowling of the Son of Man be. Okay, that's Jesus. Wheresoever the body shall be, there shall the eagles also be gathered together. Now, what this means is not earthly eagles. Oftentimes, they will use something like an eagle to is symbolic for angels, okay? Wings, right? So, yeah. So after the Great Tribulation uh, is when we have the second coming, okay? All the tribes of the earth shall mourn. They'll see Jesus coming in the clouds of heaven with much power and majesty. See, Jesus does not come back for the rapture. He tells everybody, come up here. They meet him in the clouds. So the people go up, right? First, those whose dead bodies are in the ground, who were Christians, okay, who died before the rapture, right? So, how does that work? Well, to be absent from the body is to be present with the Lord. That's what it says in the Bible. So a Christian who passes on in this world, they go and they're with God, okay, what is them, and their meat machine is laying in the earth, right, in the coffin. However, at the rapture, those bodies are resurrected and changed. They're changed from that corrupt body to an incorrupt body, and then the person is rejoined with an immortal body, a new immortal body that doesn't die anymore. Okay? So, and then those who are alive, this is in 1 Thessalonians, I believe, might be 2 Thessalonians. Those who are alive, they will be immediately changed from corruptible body to incorruptible body. So you'll get a new fresh body. You know, you'll be like in your 20s again. Isn't that something to look forward to? No aches and pains, you know, no glasses to wear, right? If you walk around with a cane, toss that aside. You won't need that no more. You won't need any of that stuff anymore because you will have a perfect body given to you by God. Right? Okay. So, when at the second coming, verse 30, alright, Jesus appears, the sign of Jesus in heaven, right? And a bunch of people will be mourning because, why are they mourning? Because they were like reprobate, you know, they didn't believe. They were like, oh, you know, here we go, you know, we're about to get spanked, right? So anyway, Jesus will come back with much power and majesty, right? And he shall send his angels with a trumpet and a great voice, and they shall gather together his elect from the four winds, from the furthest parts of the heavens to the utmost bounds of them. Okay, so as you can see, he's sending the angels to gather those Christians up that were raptured, and you see, so you got people on earth, and then you have those Christians who were raptured. He's sending his angels to gather them, right? Now he's going to start referring back to the original part of the conversation in verse 32, because he says, look, he says, let me just tell you this in a parable, right? From the fig tree learn a parable. When the branch thereof is tender, the leaves come forth, you know that summer is nigh. So you also, when you shall see all these things, know ye that it is nigh, even at the doors. So he told them what was going to happen, and then he refers back to the original part of the conversation, to the beginning of Matthew 24. So he's referencing the beginnings of Matthew 24, starting in verse 32. And then 33, when you shall see all these things, know ye that it is nigh, even at the doors. Okay? Now, people say, verse 36, but of that day and hour no one knoweth, no, not the angels of heaven, but the Father alone. But Jesus tells everybody, he's told everybody already. Jesus himself said, he told Thomas, don't you know the Father yet? I and the Father are one. Have you not? Thomas is like, show us the Father. Jesus says, I am the Father. I and the Father are one. You understand? Jesus and the Father are one. Go back to Isaiah 44 verse 6, Revelation 1:17. So that's Old Testament, New Testament. In the New Testament, in Revelation 1:17, Jesus says, I am the Alpha and the Omega. So he is the Father. He's the Father incarnated into the fleshly being that's Jesus. Right? He came to set the record straight. He came to put everybody in the right path. Look, there's only one. Me. That's it. He spoke everything into existence. Right? Yeah. Anyway, be very careful too. Matthew 24, looking at verses 46, 47, 48, 49, 50, and 51. This all talks about Christians. You know, don't be backbiting your Christian brother because he says something that you don't understand. Because the Lord will set your portion aside. There will be much gnashing of teeth. So watch yourselves. Okay? See you later.